Hey guys, it's Izzy, and in today's video I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. It is quite late, just living that chronic illness life, but it's here now, so you're welcome. I read, I think, like 27 books in June. I really just was flying through books. Enjoy my dog case. So yeah, I finished 27 books in June. Here's what they are. They were mostly queer books because it's Pride Month, and I did try and focus on books by Black authors, as I will continue to do in July. I've got so many on my TBR, and yeah, I hope you can get some recommendations from this, and I'm going to try and be as quick as possible, but it is me, so you know, you subscribed, so you're just gonna have to deal with it, okay? I just wanted to say that I am like pretty active on my Bookstagram, Twitter, and Goodreads. So if you want to know more about any of these books, I've probably written a Goodreads review, so I will link all of those down below, and yeah, check out my other socials. I would really appreciate it, and I would really love to see you there. The first book I finished in June was The Falling in Love Montage by Kira Smith. This is an e-arc that I read. I was part of like the Bookstagram tour. I'll leave my Bookstagram down below. But The Falling in Love Montage follows our main character, who, what's her name? Saoirse. What? Excuse me? There's my face. Thank you. Saoirse or Saoirse. I say Saoirse because Saoirse Ronan, but then in the book apparently it's Saoirse. But I'm just going to say Saoirse because otherwise I'm going to get it wrong. Who lives in Ireland. It is her final summer before she goes off to university, and she is dealing with her mother, who has early onset dementia and is living in a home, and her dad has found a new partner and they are getting married. So she's really struggling to deal with the emotions that come along with that, and then she meets a girl who they make an agreement that they're going to spend the summer doing cheesy rom-commy dates, and at the end of the summer they're going to go their separate ways, and that's that. So we follow her and the love interest as they do all the things, all the cliched, lovely romantic moments, and it's lovely. I gave it 4 stars. It might be like a 4.5 stars. It was just so good. It's a debut novel. It's got so much heart. I loved Saoirse as the main character. I thought she was really honest and raw and authentic. She had so many emotions, and so many of them you could like had such a strong motive. I feel like sometimes authors can kind of want their character to feel something, but you're like, why are they so angry? But like you could tell, like, although Saoirse wasn't perfect and she was definitely flawed and she definitely made mistakes, I think she was a really interesting character who really had to go on a journey of learning, and we don't see enough of that. Too many characters are perfect, and that's not real life. And both the main character and the love interest are lesbians, and that's stated multiple times in the book, which was just really lovely to see because we don't get that often enough, and it was just a really beautiful book, and I'm so glad it exists, and go read it. Okay? I then reread The Summer of Jordi Perez by Amy Spalding. This is a book that's kind of old-ish, and I read, I think, in 2018 for the first time. I just wanted to reread it. It basically follows a girl who has got an internship for the summer at this like boutique fashion place where she's like in charge of social media, and she is competing for this job at the end of her internship with another girl who also got an internship, and it's kind of like, it's not really enemies to lovers, but they're like competitive. So it is kind of like they're competing against each other, so it does add like an extra element. And she is a plus-sized fashion blogger, and she kind of is really positive about her own body. She does face some comments from the other characters, but I do think it was a really great book that had, you know, this main character being really confident in who she was and what she wanted to do, and you know what she looked like, and it was just really, really great. I gave it 3.5 stars. Not my favourite book ever, but a really great read if you're looking for more female romance, or if you want to see a plus size main character who doesn't hate herself. I then read The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. This was an e-arc, but it is out now, or it's coming out this month. And this follows our main character, Nick, and they live in a world where there are extraordinaries, which are basically superheroes, and he is like obsessed with this one superhero, and he decides that he's going to do anything it takes to become a superhero, to become an extraordinary. And it kind of follows him as he tries to make this happen, and all the failures along the way. And there's also kind of a mystery about like these two fighting superheroes and what they're doing and what they want. And Nick has ADHD, and that's explored quite a lot, and how he feels like maybe he needs to make up for some of that. And he's just like a gay chaotic mess, and I love him. And there's like gay yearning, there's like friends to lovers, there's like a whole cast of queer characters, and it's so great. The writing is so funny, it's so relatable, it was just so entertaining. And I do think I gave it 4 stars because I do think it got a little bit lost at times, like it got a little bit rambly and a little bit directionless, but on the whole it was a really fun book, and I would highly recommend picking it up. And TJ Klune is just a really great author in general. I then read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. We're not going to talk about it. I read it because my sister's boyfriend was reading Harry Potter for the first time, and we were having our own little book club. So that's why I read it. And I also read The Prisoner of Azkaban later in the month, but again, I'm not going to talk about it because we support trans women and trans people in general. Not J.K. Rowling. This is a trans safe space. So yeah, I won't talk about those. I then read All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is a autobiography, like a memoir thing, about George and his life growing up as a gay black boy to man. It follows like his entire childhood and his relationship with his family and education and his sexuality, his gender presentation, kind of the really loving and supportive family he had around him, but also the kind of trials and tribulations he faced as someone who is black, where he's expected to kind of be like toxic masculinity, where he's supposed to be like a manly man, and that's kind of what is expected in his family. And although his family are really supportive, he just always kind of feels like he's a little bit of the odd one out. And I gave it 4 stars. It was a really beautiful book, and I think it will be really, really healing for other gay black boys who may be just discovering their sexuality, or maybe experimenting with gender presentation and finding that difficult. And I think having this book out there so that those people can feel less alone is just really important, but it also just is a really good read. I gave it 4 stars because I did think the writing was sometimes a little bit too direct and lacked a little bit of emotion, and kind of storytelling vibes, but apart from that, it was a really great book, and it's by a black queer author, so read it. I then buddy read House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess with a couple of my good friends on Twitter. I'll leave their ats here. Go follow them. They're the best. This is an arc that I was very kindly sent by Penguin Random House, and I loved this book. I gave it like 4.5 stars, I think. Like it was a close 5. Like, well, I gave it 4 stars, but it was more like a 4.5. This book follows a world where when a new emperor or empress needs to be chosen, one what's the word? Like one person from each of these like 5 families, 5 houses, gets chosen, and they have to compete in these trials to see who's gonna become the emperor and empress. So the trial is called, and all the people that they thought were gonna be given for the trial are not, and all the kind of like underdogs, I guess, are chosen, and it follows them as they kind of have to battle, and it's quite like intense, and it's really, really gripping. This has so much dragon content, which I love. Dragons are my favourite mythical creature, and every book should have dragons in it. It would make it so much better. But yeah, this has 5 characters. I only really liked 2 of them, which, if you've read this, my 2 favourites were Hyperion and Vesper. They were the most interesting to me, and I did hate Ajax, not gonna lie. But this was a really fantastic book, such an impressive start to a series. I'm so excited for the second book. This is out now, I believe, and if you love dragons, if you love kind of magical competitions, if you love female villains, I guess, read it. It was a really, really strong book, and I'm so excited to see what comes next. The only reason it didn't get like 5 stars was because the beginning was a little bit slow, and I do think, again, at times it got a little bit lost in kind of dragging things out almost. But yeah, it was really great, and if it sounds interesting to you, I would highly recommend picking it up. I then read You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is another book written by a queer black author, and it follows our main character. I'm so bad at names. It's been too long since I read them. I'm so bad. Liz. And Liz is kind of, she lives with her grandparents. Her mum had sickle cell anemia and died from it, and her brother has sickle cell anemia too, which I really appreciated, that kind of chronic illness representation. And it was quite a small part of the book, but I still really appreciated it anyway. But Liz lives with her grandparents, and in order to go to college, she's riding on this, she like needs this scholarship for like a music program, because she's like what instrument does she play? Like the cello or something? I don't know. Anyway, she doesn't get this scholarship, and she thinks like her college dreams are over because her grandparents can't afford to take her through that college. And so she ends up trying to become prom queen, because in this city, town, I don't know, prom is like this massive thing, and both the prom king and queen get a massive scholarship, and so she really has to like kind of come out of her shell, become more confident. She makes new friends, and she really just realizes that she can do more things, and she can be, you know, that kind of leader, and she can be someone who is setting an example, and she can be confident. And it was just a really, really, really great book. I gave it 4 stars. The female romance was lovely. It was just really like sweet and light, and not like tragic, or like there wasn't really any homophobia, and on the whole it was just really, really beautiful. And again, Liz was not a perfect character, and I really enjoyed her journey. And yeah, if you've been thinking about picking it up, I would highly recommend doing so. You will not regret it. It's so great, and like literally everyone I'm friends with loves it too, so highly recommend. I then sadly DNF'd A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow, which I was really sad about because it is a book, again, by another Black author, and it is a debut, and I really want to support, like, debut Black authors especially. I mean, like, all Black authors, but especially, like, debut ones. And I did have an e-arc for this, but I literally only got 8% in. I just could not get on with the writing style. The sentences were too flowing, and like they were so long and would just include so many like commas, and the sentences would just completely run together, and kind of like in one sentence she could talk about like 3 different topics, and you would kind of get lost as to what exactly she was trying to say. And at the time I was struggling to read anyway, like I was super tired, and I just could not keep track of the sentences. It just felt like it needed a lot more editing and refining, so it wasn't the book for me. I would suggest trying it. It could. I think it's more of a it's not you, it's me. And I didn't rate it because I only read 8%, and I didn't think it was fair for me to give a rating based on that. But it does follow 2 characters, one who is a siren. In this world there are sirens, but they have to like stay undercover, and there is a siren like criminal trial, and I don't know, stuff. I don't know. I didn't read it, but I wouldn't say don't read it. I just couldn't keep up with the sentences. I only have one brain cell, so maybe that's it. I then read the Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is a book written in verse, another book by a queer Black author about queer Black characters, and this follows our main character Michael as we follow him from sort of childhood to university age, and again it's kind of about his journey with gender expression, sexuality, friendship, family, kind of his place in the world and finding a community. And eventually he gets into drag and really finds a community in that. And he's also like a poet. So this book is written in verse, but then there are also like poems written by the character rather than it being about the character. And I gave this 4 stars. I think it was a really strong. It is a debut novel. He's not a debut author because he's done like poetry collections and anthologies, but this is his first like novel, and I think it was a really great novel. I really enjoyed the writing style. I really connected with Michael as a character because he just had such a great voice for Michael that you could just so easily like connect with him. And yeah, it was really good, and most people I've seen have given it 5 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars because I just didn't like 100% fall in love with it, and it didn't like stick with me for a really long time, but it was really enjoyable. And don't be put off by it being in verse. It was really not hard to read at all, and it was just a really solid book. As you can see, there's a bit of a theme in that I was having a bit of an issue with not reading any 5-star books. It goes on for longer. I then read Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Quran. This is about our main character Darius, who is half Persian, and he's only ever spoken to his Persian family via like Skype over the internet. And then his parents decide that they need to go and visit Iran for the first time. Well, for Darius for the first time, because his grandpa is getting sicker. So they go and stay in Iran for like a month, I think, or like 3 weeks. I don't really know. And it follows Darius as he tries to connect with his Persian family, but struggles because he doesn't speak the language, and his little sister was brought up speaking Farsi, which is what they speak in Iran, and he wasn't, because his mum wanted him to like be more American and try and help him to fit in, but then decided to do something different with his little sister, and so she's able to like converse with them and connect with them, and he really struggles because he can't. It also talks about depression, and I really enjoyed the discussion around depression, how it can be more subtle things as well, and not just like complete, like I can't get out of bed, I can't do anything. And obviously that's another valid story, but I enjoyed kind of like the subtleties of what you feel like when you have depression. And his dad also has depression, and you would think that would kind of bring them closer together, but it's actually what like keep them apart, and like they don't really have a relationship. And he also makes a best friend for the first time, Sarab, in Iran, and it's just really lovely book. All these like familial connections, and kind of feeling like you're not American enough or not Persian enough, and discovering true friendship and discovering yourself. And there is going to be a sequel, and I do believe Darius is gay. It was only like briefly touched on in the first book, but it was a really heartfelt read, and I would highly recommend picking it up. I then read The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill, which is a really sweet graphic novel that takes place in a world where there are these little dragons that grow tea leaves out of the top of their heads, and they can be kind of like not harvested, they just can grow tea leaves and you can make tea with them. And it's about these people who take up this practice of looking after tea dragons, which is kind of a dying art form almost. It's just kind of no one's really doing it anymore, and it's about this just like found family who look after dragons. It's so sweet and it's so lovely. I gave it 4 stars. It's such beautiful artwork, and it's just such a lovely story. And if you need something to give you a little pick-me-up and just make your day, then this is definitely one to do it. The first graphic novel, The Tea Dragon Society, is available for free online, so I will leave that down below. It's just on Katie O'Neill's website, and it also has a wheelchair rep, which is really exciting because we never see that. So yeah, it was really great. I then read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. After talking about reading it for so many years, I finally did. If you don't know, my favourite book in the entire world is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which came out last year. I adore it. I think it's pure genius. And I was like kind of hesitant to read The Night Circus because this is her first book. She's only written 2 books. And I was like, well, I can't love it as much as I love The Starless Sea, because I love The Starless Sea so much. So I was kind of hesitant to read it because I was like, I just know it's not going to live up to that, and I almost wish I'd read it first. But I did end up giving it 4.5 stars. It was so beautiful. It follows... Oh, it's so hard to explain because it's not told from one point of view. Like, it's one of those books that's like kind of told from everyone's point of view in different chapters, but it follows this magical circus that kind of springs up in different places all the time, and no one really knows how it works or where it goes, but it has these beautiful magical attractions and this atmosphere which is incredible. And there's these 2 magicians that are kind of raised to compete in this duel to see who's the better magician, I guess. And it follows this chain of events and all these characters who are influenced by everything that happens, and all these connections that are made and all the passion that's put into this circus, and it's just mind-blowing. It's just stunning. I didn't think I would like it because it was hyped up so much for so long. I'm so glad I read it. It's definitely one of my favourites. The only reason it didn't get 5 stars is because I gave the Starless Sea 5 stars. And this wasn't quite the Starless Sea, but it was pretty close. It was magical, it was beautiful, it was whimsical, it was so smart, and I just adored it. I adored it. Yeah, I don't even know like how. That's how I felt about the Starless Sea though. Like it's just like I don't even know how to explain my love for it, but just read it. I then read Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles, which is a book that follows our main character whose brother, Tyler Johnson, is killed in an incident of police brutality, and it follows him as he tries to kind of process the grief of losing his brother and also struggling with the anger of the injustice and trying to get his brother's name cleared. And it was a really, really great book that talked about police brutality and the struggles of being a black person in America. I gave it 3.5 stars because I really think the theme of police brutality was explored so well, but it was quite a short book and there wasn't really any development aside from that theme, and so I didn't really connect much with the characters or like the relationships between them. So it needed more development as like an entire book rather than just the theme of police brutality. But it is a book by a black author about police brutality, so if you're looking for more of those books to read to educate yourself, it was a good one. It's short and it did a really great job of getting its point across. It just like didn't have anything else going for it so much. I mean, I much prefer like The Hate You Give, for example, but this was still a good one. I'd still say read it. I then read Where We Go From Here by Lucas Rocha, not sure. This follows 3 characters who, where do they live? Brazil? Is it Brazil? I can't remember. I'm blanking. Is it? Yes, Brazil. And 2 of them they're all gay, and 2 of them are HIV positive. One of them has been HIV positive for like 3 years, I think, and the other one is just finding out that he's HIV positive, and the other character is someone who is dating the boy who's had HIV, who's been HIV positive for 3 years, and he's not HIV positive, and so we kind of see the grief cycle that you have to go through when you first find out you're HIV positive. Then we see kind of where you are after you've kind of accepted that you're HIV positive, but there's still so much stigma around it and you still struggle with how people treat you. And then we get kind of an outsider perspective of dating someone who's HIV positive and kind of dealing with your own prejudice and realizing that there's no one way to, you know, be gay or be HIV positive, and it's so different for everyone. And it's a really powerful story of love and friendship, but it is filled with quite a lot of bigotry. So I would say just be careful, just check a couple trigger warnings. It's nothing like super duper intense, but it's definitely there. I really loved the end. It was really powerful, and I loved the ending. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a good book. I just wasn't overly invested. I just didn't care all that much. Oh, and I also read Mr. Popper's Penguins by Richard Atwater because I watched the movie and I was like, wait, this is a book? Don't judge me, I was depressed. And so Mr. Popper's Penguins was the obvious movie choice. Okay, my brain was not in a good place. Don't judge me. And then finally my curse of not finding a 5-star book was broken, because I read Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. How do I explain my love for this book, you ask? I can't. Would I die for the main character Soraya? In a heartbeat. Literally, she could run me over and I'd thank her. Like, that's how much I love her. But this is a Persian-inspired sort of fairy tale-esque story about our main character Soraya, who has been cursed with her touch being poisonous, and if she touches anyone, she will poison them. And so she is kind of hidden in the castle because her family are like the royal family, and she has just kind of been hidden away for her whole life. And one day she decides that she wants to do something about it, and so she kind of goes on this quest to undo her curse, and she realizes that her mother has been lying to her about her history and her past, and she realizes a lot of people just don't have her best interests at heart, and she feels so much frustration with her family and you know, the circumstance she's been put in, and she kind of goes on this journey of becoming almost a villain, and it just discusses like morals and people and connections so incredibly well. I did write quite a detailed Goodreads review, so I'll leave that down below because I just can't express how incredible this book was. But honestly, just read it. Like, I promise you, you're gonna love it. It's just... and the main character is bi, there's a female-female romance, and it's written by an author of colour, and it's queer. So, no excuse not to read it. It's it's excellency. It's chef's kiss. It's like let's just say a prayer to Melissa Bashardoust for giving us this art. I then was on a roll because I read another 5-star book, and that was Camp by Lev A.C. Rosen. He wrote Jack of Hearts, which was one of my favourite books of last year, and so I was super excited to read this book, and it did not disappoint. I read the arc, but it is out now, and I would highly recommend picking it up. Yeah, this follows our main character Randy, and he is gay, and every summer he goes to this summer camp, which is a safe space for queer youth, and like that, you've already pulled me in. Like, a camp for queer people where they like can just be themselves, like, what a dream. And he decides this summer that he is gonna change kind of who he is, become a different version of himself, because he's been in love with this boy who also goes to the camp for years, and this boy is only into masculine guys, and Randy is quite feminine presenting, and so he kind of gives himself a makeover and sets out to make this boy fall in love with him, in the hopes that once he's fallen in love with the version that he thinks he wants, he can then show more of himself until eventually he kind of just accepts him for who he is. And it's a really, really beautiful story about kind of what it means to be gay, how there's no one way to be a queer person, and how much internalized homophobia can affect people. And I really enjoyed that, though there was an antagonist of sorts, he was never truly vilified, and he was given the chance of redemption, and I just really appreciated that that the author looked at the scenario in so many different ways, and he explored so many great themes about queer life, and it's just so good. It's funny, it's relatable, it's witty, it's romantic, it's cute, there's such great friendships, such a great setting. Like, I can just read it, okay? Just read it, you will not be disappointed. Again, I did write a in-depth Goodreads review, which you can check out on my Goodreads, but read it. I then read Pet by Kweke Emezi. I gave this 3 stars. Most people give it like 5 stars, so I was a little bit in the minority. But again, I think it was more, it's not you, it's me. This follows our main character, Jam. She is actually transgender. She was born male at birth, but it's kind of just told and then it's moved on. And I really loved that she was transgender, but it wasn't the focus of the story, and it was just like really a positive representation of a trans person. That was great. But it is set in a world where they believe that kind of every bad person has been taken away, and that there are no more monsters in their world. But Jam is warned that there is a monster in her best friend's house, and she sets out with this demon to figure out who it is and try and get rid of them. Trigger warning for quite a few things. I would just check before you start reading it. I don't want to say the trigger warnings here, and I just check before you read it. But I just didn't really get the writing style. It just didn't really work for me. I do think it was a very unique and interesting way to explore kind of themes of especially, I guess, people who you think are good can do terrible things. And again, it's written by a black author about a trans character, and it was good. It was just kind of weird, and I didn't really get it all the time. So it was a 3-star read for me, but I've heard so many people love it, so if it sounds intriguing to you, check it out. I then read My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. This is, I don't even know what category it is, but it's basically about this woman who works as a nurse, I believe, and her sister is a serial killer. She basically kills every man she dates, and then her sister, the main character, has to kind of clean it up. But one day her sister starts dating the doctor that she works for, and she decides that she needs to like somehow intervene. I gave this 2 stars, and on Goodreads I just wrote, I think I'm just dumb because I have no idea what the point of this book is. If you've read this book, could you tell my one brain cell what the point of it was? There was no mystery. There was very little action. I'm not sure what the lesson was, but I just don't understand it. Could someone tell my idiot of a brain what this book was doing? But again, it's by a black author, and it's really short. I guess if it sounds interesting, go ahead and read it. A lot of people liked it. But if you have more similar reading tastes to me, I would say skip it. Unfortunately, because I actually thought I was really going to love it, and I did not. I reread Technically You Started It by Lana Wood Johnson. I just really needed a light, fluffy read because I'd been reading heavier books, and books with like heavier topics, and I just really needed like a palette cleanser. And this is just a really sweet book that's told in text format, and it's about a girl who gets a text from a boy in her school, but him and his cousin both have the same name, and which one she's speaking to, we don't know. Well, we do know, but shh. And it's just told in text format, and it's just a really sweet, fluffy book. Not many people love it, but I think if you're looking for something short, sweet, and just nice, then I would highly recommend it. And the male love interest is actually bi, which we need more of, because there's not enough bi boys and men in books, and that needs to be resolved. I then read Sorted, Growing Up, Coming Out and Finding My Place by Jackson Bird. This is another memoir about Jackson, who is transgender, born female at birth, and it follows his journey through kind of not necessarily being someone who like knew since they were born that they were trans, and kind of figuring it out. And it's quite upsetting because he has to fight himself and others along the way, and it is difficult to read at some points, but it is overall a hopeful, positive, and just like an uplifting read. But I did really enjoy learning more about the trans experience. It's definitely something I want to expose myself to more, because I don't think I've read enough trans-centered books, and that's something I really want to keep doing throughout the rest of the year. So I really enjoyed it. I don't rate memoirs because I just find it a little bit weird, because it feels like rating someone's life, and it just makes me a bit uncomfortable. But I would highly recommend reading it. I would probably give it around 4 stars if I was to rate it. And if you're looking for a book about the trans experience, or well, this Jackson's trans experience, then I would highly recommend checking it out. And also the audiobook is read by him, and it's really, really good. So if you like audiobooks, check out the audiobook. I then read Pride by E.B. Zaboy. This is a like modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I gave this 2.5 stars, unfortunately. It follows these two characters, and Zuri lives in this neighbourhood. They're very close-knit, and it's a poorer neighbourhood, and a boy and a family moves in, a really rich family, and she kind of has a lot of feelings about that, and it's sort of like a enemies to lovers romance. It was just very mediocre. It was really short. I didn't care about the characters, I didn't care about the relationships. It just didn't really have any like personality or like heart. So it wasn't my favourite. And I'm kind of sad about that, because it is a black retelling of Pride and Prejudice, which I was excited about, but unfortunately it didn't deliver for me. I then read the Tea Dragon Tapestry by Katie O'Neill. This was an e-arc that I read, and this was really sweet. I gave this 5 stars. I loved it more than the first one. I did write a little Goodreads review. This is getting long now, so I'm just going to say check that out. It was really beautiful. I loved it, and I could read about these characters, and I could look at the pages forever and ever and ever. I then read the e-arc of Cinderella Is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. I buddy read this with Anik, and we kind of had the exact same feelings, and they also wrote a great review about it, so I'll try and link that down in the description box if I remember. But this is basically a book where Cinderella was real and she has been dead for 200 years, but once a girl turns like 16 or something, they have to go to this ball where men will basically choose them to be their wife. They have no say in it. It's just how it is. And basically the main character, Sophia, escapes the ball and starts this quest to find out the truth about who Cinderella was, and and what she actually did. And yeah, I thought this was going to be a 5 stars, honestly, and sadly I only gave it 2 stars. Again, I wrote a really long review, so I will link that down below. I'm very conscious that this is getting long now. So yeah, this was really disappointing, but I just didn't care about anything. Yeah, that's all I have to say, but I'm really sad because it's a book about a queer black girl and a female female romance, and it's a debut novel, and I really wanted to love it, and I feel really bad, but it just it didn't work for me. I'm so sad. I then read Forest of Souls by Laurie M. Lee. Again, this is something I thought was going to be 5 stars, but ended up being a 3-star for me. It's kind of a hard book to explain. It basically follows our main character. What's her name? I don't know. I'm so bad at names. Oh, also about Saoirse. And she basically wants to be a royal spy for the queen, but then she's kind of derailed when her best friend dies, and her magic awakens inside of her so that she can save her best friend. And so then she is a shaman, which is what like people with magic are called in this world, and she has to kind of try and stop a war from happening. It was just very average. I'm sorry, especially to Amber, who loves this book so much. Amber, don't. I'm sorry. Okay, I tried to love it. It was just long and not very. Didn't have a lot of payoff for me. And the final book I read was Codename Verity by Elizabeth Ween. Again, I thought this was going to be a 5-star, it ended up being a 3-star. It's a historical fiction novel about this girl who she was like a communicator or something for the British in World War II, and she gets captured and is interrogated in Germany, and is kind of held hostage there until she gives them the information they need. And so it follows what is happening there while she's being interrogated, but also it flips to the past where she becomes best friends with this other girl, and then kind of like halfway through we switch from the girl who's been captured to her best friend, and we learn more about her story. This was 3.5 stars. It was good. It just didn't have enough intrigue for me, and it just wasn't exciting and thrilling like I expected it to be. So yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment, but I enjoyed it. It just wasn't anything like super special. But yes, those are all the books I read in June. I try to be quick. When am I ever quick? Doesn't happen, I'm sorry. But thank you so much for watching. Sorry my upload schedule has been kind of all over the place. I've not been that well, so I cannot film consistently or like regularly, and yeah. Sorry. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for 800 subscribers. That's wild. I'm gonna have to address that another time because like I can't process. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!